Las Vegas, Nevada, March 1974. Caesar's Palace had seen everything. Sinatra throwing room service trays. Davis Jr. performing until 4 a.m. because he simply didn't want to stop. By 1974, that showroom had absorbed so much history that nothing was supposed to surprise it anymore. Then Michael Jackson pointed at the wrong table. He was 16, moved across the stage the way most people breathe, automatically, like the body already knew the answer. The Jackson 5 residency at Caesars confirmed what the music industry was beginning to understand. This wasn't just a talented kid from Indiana. This was something different. The show that night was everything it was supposed to be. And then halfway through the set, Michael spotted Dean Martin at table 9. Not the front row. Table 9 was slightly left of center, close enough to feel everything, far enough that the spotlight wouldn't find you unless you wanted it to. The seat of a man who had come to witness something, not to be witnessed. Dean Martin was 57. He had been performing in Las Vegas since before Michael was born. He had built the template for what a Vegas show was supposed to feel like. Effortless, smooth, like watching someone do something they genuinely loved. When Dean Martin showed up to watch your show, it meant something. Michael felt the rush instantly. He didn't stop to think. He walked to the microphone between songs and pointed toward table 9. Ladies and gentlemen, we have someone very special in the house tonight. Dean Martin is right there, and I would like to invite him up here to perform with us. The spotlight found table 9 before Dean could do anything about it. 2,200 people turned. Dean sat very still. He picked up his drink, set it down, looked at Michael with an expression that wasn't quite a smile and wasn't quite something else. He shook his head once, slowly, and stayed in his seat. The crowd made a sound Michael would remember for years. Not disappointment, more like recalibration. He recovered fast. The show continued. But backstage after the final song, a Caesars staff member appeared at his dressing room door. Mr. Martin would like a word. What Michael expected was a polite explanation. What he got was something else entirely. Dean was standing near the corridor, jacket on, drink in hand. He didn't sit. You put me on the spot, Dean said. Not angry, not warm either, just direct. You put the light on me in front of your crowd so I couldn't say no without making a scene. That's not an invitation. That's a demand with a spotlight attached to it. Michael started to speak. I'm not finished, Dean said. You're extraordinary, genuinely. But extraordinary doesn't give you the right to use someone else's presence to make your moment bigger. When you invite a man to perform, you ask him privately. You give him a real choice. Not a choice with 2,000 people watching him make it. He shook Michael's hand and walked out. Michael stood in the corridor. The casino noise beyond the doors. The city that never went quiet. He was 16 years old and he had just been corrected by Dean Martin. He didn't forget it. He went back to his dressing room and sat in the dark for a while. But here's what nobody knew yet. That correction was about to sit in Michael's pocket for a full decade. And when it finally came back, it would produce one of the most unplanned moments in Las Vegas concert history. By 1984, Michael Jackson wasn't just famous, he was something beyond famous. A level of cultural presence that didn't have a clean word for it. Thriller had done things albums weren't supposed to be able to do. The Victory Tour had sold out before the dates were even confirmed. MGM Grand, Las Vegas. August 1984. A charity benefit, invitation-only crowd of 3,000. 2 hours before showtime. Bill Bray, his head of security, found Michael in the dressing room and spoke quietly. Dean Martin is in the audience. Table 11. Michael stopped moving. He sat down in front of the mirror. 25 years old, the biggest pop star on the planet. And somewhere in that auditorium, a 67-year-old man who had corrected him in a corridor in 1974 was sitting at table 11. Frank DeLeo knocked and came in. We could bring him backstage before the show, make it a whole thing. No, Michael said. We could announce him from the... No. He asked for a cocktail napkin and a pen, wrote for 2 minutes, folded it once. Give this to him, privately. No one sees it happen. Tell them to wait for an answer. The napkin said, I'd like to invite you up on stage tonight. I'm asking privately, which means your answer is actually yours. If the answer is no, I won't mention you from the stage or put a light on you. If the answer is yes, the song is your choice. Tell me what you want to sing, and I'll make sure the band knows. All yours, Michael. The man came back 12 minutes later with a napkin. On the back, in Dean's handwriting, 5 words. Yes. I picked the song, no song title. Dean had answered the invitation and kept the song entirely to himself. Michael could have sent someone back to ask, could have given the band time to prepare. He didn't. He walked into that show knowing Dean Martin was going to come on stage at some point and sing something, and Michael had no idea what it was going to be. Think about what that means. The most controlled performer on the planet just handed over a piece of his own show with no safety net. He knew exactly why. Dean had taught him. An hour and 20 minutes into the show, Michael moved to the microphone and looked toward table 11. There's someone here tonight, he said. Not the performance voice. Something closer to how he actually talked. Someone who taught me something in 1974 that I needed to hear and wasn't ready to hear. I was 16 and I made a mistake in front of a crowd, and he told me about it afterward, privately, because that's the kind of man he is. A pause. I asked him tonight if he'd come up here. I asked him privately. He said yes. Dean, it's yours. The spotlight found table 11. Dean Martin stood, 67 years old, dark jacket, open collar. He had finished his own show at the Riviera 2 hours ago and come to watch someone else's. Now he walked toward the stage with the unhurried certainty of a man who has made a decision, and the deciding was the only part that required effort. Michael met him at the stairs, shook his hand. Not a host welcoming a guest, something more equal than that. He held out the microphone and said nothing. Dean took it, looked out at 3,000 people. He turned to the piano player. Do you know Smile? Charlie Chaplin. Key of D slow. Simple intro. Michael went completely still. The piano started. There was a house on Euclid Avenue in Gary, Indiana, 3 doors down from where the Jacksons lived. The Ferrara family moved there in 1961, and on Sunday afternoons, Mrs. Ferrara used to sit on her porch with a small record player. Italian songs, mostly. But one melody wasn't Italian, a Chaplin tune she'd carried from somewhere before the war, something she'd never stopped loving. Smile, though your heart is aching. 8-year-old Michael had heard that melody floating down Euclid Avenue on summer Sundays for years without knowing the name of it. Just the feeling, that particular mixture of sadness and something that lived in the same neighborhood as hope. He had been carrying it for 17 years without knowing. Dean's voice in 1984 was not the voice on the records, worn in, deeper. He sang the opening lines not as performance, as something being told. Smile, though your heart is aching. Smile, even though it's breaking. Michael's breath caught. He knew this melody, not from a record, from a porch on Euclid Avenue, from a Sunday afternoon in Gary when he was 8 years old, and music was still the thing that happened outside, in the air, before it became the thing he was. He started humming. Not deliberately, the involuntary kind. The kind your body produces when a melody surfaces and finds its way out before you decide to let it. Dean heard it, turned slightly, moved the microphone a few inches. Not a demand. Just space. Michael looked at the microphone, looked at Dean. He sang, not under his breath, his actual voice, the voice that 3,000 people had paid to hear that night. That voice joining Dean Martin's on a Charlie Chaplin melody from 1936. Light up your face with gladness. Hide every trace of sadness. 3,000 people went completely quiet. Not the expectant silence before a big moment. Something different. The silence of people watching something happen that they understand. Without being able to explain it, they will not see again. 2 voices that had no business working together. The swing-era legend from Steubenville, Ohio, and the kid from Gary, who had permanently altered what pop music could be. It worked. When the song ended, 4 seconds passed before the applause came. And when it came, it sounded different, rougher, the sound of people responding to something real. Backstage, Dean didn't stay long. Michael found him near the exit. Why that song? Michael asked. When Dean Martin decided to answer something honestly, the performance of ease dropped just slightly. the actual man briefly visible underneath. My mother sang it, Dean said. Not from a record. She knew the melody from somewhere older. She'd hum it in the kitchen when she didn't think anyone was listening. I recorded it because it was the only way I knew to keep something when she wasn't there anymore. Michael was quiet. You knew it, Dean said. My neighbor. 3 houses down on Euclid Avenue. Sunday afternoons. I never knew the name. Just what it felt like. Something moved in Dean's face. When someone asks the right way, Dean said, you give them something real, not a performance, the actual thing. He picked up his jacket. Tonight you asked right. He extended his hand. Michael took it. In 1974, Michael said, you were right about everything. I know, Dean said. That's why it took you 10 years. He left. Michael stood in the corridor, the casino noise beyond the doors, Las Vegas continuing the way it always continued, without pause, without waiting for anyone. He thought about Euclid Avenue, Sunday afternoons, a melody that had been living in him for 17 years under a name he never knew. He had carried it all that way without knowing, and Dean Martin had brought it out of him simply by asking the right way. Michael Jackson released his version of Smile in 1995 on the History album. When journalists asked what it meant to him, he said it was the piece of music he had loved the longest without understanding why. He never publicly attached Dean Martin's name to it, but in his personal collection, kept for the rest of his life, was a cocktail napkin, folded once, Michael's handwriting on one side, 5 words on the other. Yes, I picked the song. Some lessons arrive when you're 16 and too young to know what to do with them. They don't leave. They stay in the background, reshaping things quietly. And then one night, a decade later, someone walks out of the audience and sings a melody you've been carrying since you were 8 years old on a porch in Indiana. And you finally understand what you were supposed to learn. Not just how to ask, but why a real choice, given freely, without pressure, without a spotlight, is the only thing that ever brings out the actual song. So tell me something. Has anyone ever given you a real choice instead of a demand dressed up as an invitation? Leave it in the comments. And if you want more stories about the moments behind the music that nobody put on the official set list, subscribe. This is exactly what we do here.